I said before this game that Liverpool had a huge opportunity coming into this run of Premier League fixtures, because the average position of the sides that they will face over the next 9 games, including this one, was going to be 14th in the Premier League. And so you have to say they'd had a tough fixture schedule to start this season, but this was, in theory, an easier run that we would hope would allow them to pick up some form, to really kind of nail themselves at the very least into those Champions League places. And hey, you never know, with a bit of luck, maybe even get themselves somehow back into title contention. And he started off, of course, with a game against the Nottingham Forest side, who were mired in 19th in the Premier League, and it was at Anfield as well. So everything going in their favour to really kick off a much improved run today. And yet, here we are at full time, discussing a 3-0 defeat, and a deserved 3-0 defeat to Nottingham Forest. And I have to say, has really changed the complexion for me and my thinking around this team, this manager, this whole situation. I have to say, such was the dire nature of the performance and the result, because the fact is, you can kind of, the manager did not like the use of the phrase excuses recently in a press conference. He kind of bristled against that. And so maybe I will call them mitigating factors that Liverpool have faced. And I have to say, I'm big on this. I think Liverpool, they have had a lot of those mitigating factors. They had a lot of issues to deal with this season that have been outside of the manager's control. For example, injuries, the fitness of players who have come into pre-season late. The schedule's been really difficult. And of course, and we must always mention this, and mention it with sensitivity, and I said this in my preview for this match, the death of Diogo Jota, we do not know the impact that's had on the players. It's very, very difficult to judge that, and the impact it has on on-field performance. So all these factors, you throw them in together, but you also have to ask, how long does that last for? How long do these mitigating factors, outside of Jota, and of course that grief will go on for a long time, but the other ones, the injuries, the schedule, all these other things, the disrupted pre-season, how long does that kind of wash as in it? I wanted to say excuse, the manager might not like that, but that's the word I probably want to use, really, because look, it's November now, it's late November. The signings should be bedded in by now, or at least a couple of them should be showing real signs of being close to the form that got them the big money moves to Liverpool. We aren't really seeing that. The change in the game plan, the rotating in the midfield, the being a bit more PSG-like in the approach. We should be seeing a better version of that by November, and yet we're not. What, in fact, we are actually seeing is Liverpool just get worse and worse on a weekly basis, and really, really disappointing, worrying performances, I would say. And for all the issues that Liverpool have faced and the manager and the players have had to contend with, it's just hard not to feel, watching it, particularly watching it today, that this much talent should be just playing better than they are at the moment, and just not be as bad as what we saw today. This talent that we've got in the squad, these players, even if some of them aren't peak level of fitness, they should simply be playing better than this. They shouldn't be getting beaten 3-0 at home by the team that's 19th in the Premier League. I mean, this is just the 4th time in Premier League history that Liverpool have lost 3-0 at home. So we're talking historically bad in terms of the result that Liverpool got today. And so it should be miles better than this, really. There's just no, as I say, excuse or reason for it. I think justifies the level of performance being quite this bad. And I think, look, the obvious conversation now is going to be around the manager's future and how much longer he can hold on. And I think the key factor from FSG's point of view was always going to be Champions League qualification. That's the bare minimum every season. If the manager does that, he gets a chance to build on it in the following season. And so I think with Liverpool, they would ideally wait to a point where Champions League qualification is off the table, Liverpool can't get there, and then they would think about it. And ideally, even then, I think would wait until the end of the season, as they did with Kenny Dalglish, to perhaps make the decision then over a potential sacking. But it's now 8 defeats in 11. And again, for all the issues, for all the problems he faced, how many more can this manager lose? I mean, when does that turn into 9 in 12, into 10 in 13? If they just keep losing games and losing games to opposition that they absolutely should be beaten, and let's get it right, Nottingham Forest are that, because you can kind of convince yourself that any team in the Premier League can beat you, but I still think Liverpool at Anfield should be doing far better than this. And the defeats just can't go on, as I say. And look, I think the manager now, for me, is on seriously thin ice, because ultimately those games against Aston Villa and Real Madrid, which were so fantastic, a throwback to the football that we saw last season, great results and great performances, they just look like a false dawn now, and it doesn't look like he's able to consistently create that, or to consistently platform those level of performances. We're just not seeing that. Liverpool haven't turned a corner in any way, and as I say, they're just getting worse, and Liverpool managers cannot keep losing and losing and losing. And even if you want to defer the decision to the end of the season, if the results continue this way, I don't think that Liverpool's hierarchy are going to be able to do that. I think that the decision is going to be forced on them, because it's just a million miles away from being good enough at the moment, really. And so, yeah, as I say, I think the manager's in a little bit of trouble at the moment. And so we wait and see kind of how that conversation develops, particularly if, this is followed up with a couple more defeats in the league, because the position then, the league position, is going to start looking extremely dire. I think I'm right in saying they're 11th place at the moment, and that is nowhere near good enough for a defending champion with this level of talent in the squad, is it? Let's be honest. Now, before I go into the next part of the video and kind of break down a couple more issues from this game, I am delighted to say it's the only thing I'm happy about at the moment, and I think I did this the last time after a Manchester United defeat as well, but I am delighted to say my good friends at NordVPN have got on board with sponsoring the next couple of videos as well over this run. Hopefully there's a few more wins in there as well, and so you can once again support the channel, support me, and get yourself a little bit of a bargain as well at nordvpn.com/Lynch LFC. The link will be down in the description there. Now, just a quick explainer around VPNs. I've got a lot of people asking me, well, what actually is this? Well, if you ever wondered what they actually do, I can kind of tell you here. If you want to watch content when it's geo-blocked in your region, it might be available elsewhere. For example, you wanted to see the highlights from RTE for the Ireland game over the international break, anything like that. Whether you're abroad or as well, if you go abroad and you want to watch content, maybe your child wants to watch the programs that they watch at home on the iPad, they can't do that. Well, this is a way to do it through NordVPN. Really, really helpful with that. With just one click, you can change your location to 127 different countries at the moment. That's an awful lot. So it's kind of like teleporting around the world from your sofa or wherever you are. And it does mean that you'll never miss a Liverpool game, no matter where you are in the world. Not only that, keeps all your personal info safe by hiding your IP address, keeping hackers at bay, which is a huge plus. And I can use my NordVPN account on 10 different devices as well, which is really helpful because I'm covered then wherever I am, whether it's my laptop, my iPad, my phone, whatever. Now, right now, there's a Black Friday offer on, which you should make the most of if you're thinking about getting a VPN. It gives you 4 months extra free when you purchase a 2-year plan, and it's completely risk-free as well because it's 30-day money-back guarantee. So really, if you are thinking about getting a VPN, this is the one to get. And of course, there is a link there. You can get your money off. You can get that risk-free offer of 30 days as well. So do click that link, and as I say, massively supports the channel. So that is nordvpn.com/Lynch LFC. And thank you to NordVPN as well for supporting the channel again, and they will be part of the next few videos going forward. Now, unfortunately, on a negative side, there's more to go back to in terms of downsides for this performance from Liverpool. And look, it might seem harsh what I was talking about there about the manager being on thin ice, because look, I've been a big supporter of him. He won the Premier League last season, and I have talked repeatedly about those mitigating factors that he's faced. But I had a conversation with someone over the break, someone who works for Liverpool, about the fact that, yeah, for all those problems, this was a run where Liverpool was supposed to be doing so much better, and that person kind of accepted that, yes, there's going to be expectations on this run, and an expectation internally as much as externally. And I think the most damning thing of the whole thing here is that Liverpool fully deserve to lose this game 3-0 against, as I say, a side who, have come into this 19th in the league. And you can kind of talk yourself into a position whereby, every game is difficult. And you might have looked at this and said, yeah, well, they're 19th, but they've improved under Sean Dyche. 4 of the best 5 defensive performances they've put in this season in terms of XG have come under Dyche since he's come in, so he's immediately solved some of their issues. It's certainly a harder game than it was a few weeks back, but like I say, you can say that about every game. You can say it about the next game going into facing West Ham away from home. They've improved under Nuno, so suddenly that looks a bit more difficult. The fact is, any side who is any good will just go and beat these sides, because they've still got that fragile confidence. They've still got the players that had them in 19th or 18th or wherever they were in the league at the start of the day today. So, these are the games that Liverpool should be winning. And I think the most worrying aspect for me about this performance against a side that was in that position was that Liverpool were absolutely awful for me from the point at which they went 1-0 down really half an hour in. I thought they'd been very good up to that point. They created chances. They'd done really well. But they concede from a set piece, and then heads just completely go. Confidence goes. Any of the football they were playing had completely gone out of the performance. And the worst aspect here is that Liverpool go 2-0 down in the 46th minute of a game at Anfield. And what you would expect after that is basically Nottingham Forest facing the Alamo, backs to the wall, really, really struggling to keep Liverpool out. But the game ends and it's 21 shots for Liverpool, 15 shots for Nottingham Forest, 4 shots on target for Liverpool, 7 shots on target for Nottingham Forest, 2 expected goals for Liverpool, 1.3 for Nottingham Forest. So on the XG, maybe Liverpool, you'd say, were maybe a little unlucky, but this is a Sean Dyche team. They're not a team that would generally come here and be able to cut you open, and yet they absolutely did, and it finishes 1-1 on the big chances. And as I say, they concede in the 46th minute, Liverpool, to go 2-0 down, and yet the second half statistics are 11 shots each, 1 shot on target for Liverpool, at 2-0 down from the 46th minute at Anfield against 19th in the league. 1 shot on target for Liverpool, 5 for Nottingham Forest in the second half. 0.84 expected goals to Liverpool in the second half, 1.08 for Nottingham Forest. I just cannot believe that you have got yourself into a situation where you are 2-0 down to a side that just wants to defend, to see out the lead, and that is the extent of what you were able to create. And ultimately, Arne Slot didn't have a response. He didn't have a plan outside of what he has done all season, which is to just throw subs and attacking subs into the mix, hoping that the ball will drop. Well, what actually happened is Liverpool just couldn't progress the ball at all because they took off all the defenders who were able to do that and replaced them with forwards who were just standing at the top end of the pitch and coming up against a low block and looking pretty clueless about how to get the ball into dangerous areas, really. So, the fact is that Arne Slot's subs used to be a real strength of his, and he used to be really smart in kind of making tactical subs that would really tweak things. Now you're just looking at it, it's just kind of, as I say, throwing on forwards, and that's a little bit of a worry, really, because it looks to me like the plan at the start's not working. He has no plan then to rectify it outside of throwing forwards on, and no plan really of kind of how to use this squad. And so, how is that working? Is that because the squad he's been given is not what he wants? Then I would say there are question marks over Richard Hughes. But also, as Richard Hughes and the recruitment staff, have they put together a squad that's not necessarily to benefit Arne Slot, but just these are good signings for Liverpool in the long term? Well, if you're not buying players for your manager at the moment, then you clearly have your eye on somebody else. And if that is the case, and these players weren't bought for Arne Slot, then who were they bought for? And to be honest, if these defeats keep coming, should you go out and get that person? I really do think that's the conversation that we should be having at the moment, because, as I say, I don't get the vibe that the manager knows how to use the squad to get the best out of it. I don't know what his best 11 is, and we're at November now, late November. I just don't think that there's been a marrying up of what the recruitment staff have given the manager and what he's been able to use and get the best out of them. And it's too late in the season for that to be acceptable, in my opinion. And kind of a really good example of this, you'd have to say, is Alexander Isak and the decision to use him today. Now, I know what the manager was saying in his embargoed section of the press conference about, they need to get him fit, they need to get him there and firing because he's so key, isn't he? But surely this week of these 2 games, the PSV Eindhoven game is the one that you use him in. And I got a little bit of stick on social media for writing a piece this week about the fact that I felt that Alexander Isak was currently offering less than Darwin Núñez. Now, I obviously know that's not going to be the case in the long term. I know he's a far better player. I know that Darwin Núñez, Liverpool needed to move him on. He was a real problem for them, really, in terms of his inconsistent finishes and the other issues with him as a player. So I'm not saying he's a better player. But the fact is, when Núñez would have offered more today, I think, than Alexander Isak. He would have offered more up to this point of the season. He did last season. I think he had more goals. He was more involved, more minutes last season up to this point than Alexander Isak has. And so, when you start looking into the reasons that Liverpool have struggled this season, well, if you are downgrading your players in that way, and the player that you've bought as a replacement, whether he cost 125 million or not, if he comes in and he's offering you less, that is going to cause you problems in the long term and, well, in the short term. And that is absolutely what we saw today from Alexander Isak. I mean, 15 touches, one skewed shot that he should have done much better, and he lost all 7 of his duels. As I say, that feels like a downgrade. That feels like Liverpool have paid 125 million for a player who is worse than at the moment, than the guy that he replaced. And I think 125 million pound signing, you would expect that player to hit the ground running, but he is, and I don't, if he doesn't, you start to worry about, the long term and if he's a good signing. But I don't think that's the case with Isak. And I just think, there's clearly a very good player there who's not fit at the moment, and that's his problem. But if you're starting him in games, you're going to expose those problems. And you start him in a Premier League game, it will get absolutely exposed because the level is too high and you cannot carry passengers in this league. And that is what Liverpool are doing at the moment. So as I say, it's like you've gone from Núñez, who is a problem, to someone who at the moment, just right now, is a worse problem. And that's making the team worse as a whole. And, maybe you could question whether the manager's getting the best out of him. But again, that's another question that's an uncomfortable conversation and not one that we want to have at the moment. And another player, really, I think there maybe are a couple of uncomfortable conversations to have around at the moment for me is Ibrahima Konate. Now, again, I thought he made a really good start to the game, coming out with the ball, looking confident, looking good in his defending, but then he gives away the corner with a bit of kind of a mistake really around that. Forest score from it, and I thought from that point onwards, really, he just couldn't seem to get his head right. I mean, he's probably the biggest candidate out of this entire team, really, for struggling when Liverpool get themselves into difficult situations. He was rash, he was clumsy, he just looked low on confidence. And, Liverpool, again, have to ask themselves the question. They're in talks with him around a new contract at the moment. Is it a wise move to give him one? Is it because the manager's putting him in difficult situations? Is it because the team as a whole is not performing? That is the question they need to ask, and whether, giving him more money, giving him bigger money, is that the right decision? I mean, I have been a big defender of Ibrahima Konate, but he's consistently now putting in performances that wouldn't justify a new deal. So the recruitment staff have to really pick out whether that is because of the team around him causing him issues, or because he's not going to justify that kind of money. They have a big decision to make around that. So yeah, not a lot of positive things to say around this match, really. I just think, there's just no redeeming factors about it whatsoever. And the fact is, if everyone is playing poorly, and if everyone's consistently playing poorly, then questions are going to be levelled at the manager, aren't they? And I think that's the position we're in. I'm not quite at the situation where I'm completely writing Arne Slot off, or certainly not writing the piece that Arne Slot, the manager, should be leaving just yet. But as I say, he just cannot keep losing games, can he? Because we're getting into crisis territory now, and if the losses can keep coming, particularly looking at that West Ham away game coming up after this one, then you seriously start to worry about his future. And I think FSG, with one eye on qualification for the Champions League, will be having discussions internally about that, but we will see how that develops. Now, going to wrap it up there. I'm sure there are going to be plenty of comments on this one. Interested to know, what do you think? Where are you thinking? Where's your head at in terms of the manager's situation? Because it's getting really, really bad now, isn't it? Let's be honest. Do let me know your thoughts on all that. And if you can like and subscribe as well, that would be massively appreciated. And of course, don't forget about that NordVPN offer as well, nordvpn.com/LynchLFC. It really, really helps the channel if you click through and have a look at that. So please do. And thanks so much for your support. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully some better things to talk about in the future, but I'll see you guys very soon.